Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Time Out with Derek and Joe. For Joe Azelina, I am Derek Gano. Thank you for taking time out of your day to spend some time with us. And today we welcome back Leonard Tabone, who is on our, don't tell me, our NFL Super Bowl preview, I believe, who gave his Tampa Bay Buccaneers preview. But today he's jumping on to help us with a little NBA playoffs and the first round recap, as well as a little second round preview. So, Leonard, we appreciate you coming back on.
Thanks, Derek, for having me.
So, without further ado, let us get started. I believe that the first round officially just ended yesterday, being the Sunday, um, and it was a very good series. But before we jump into that, we will jump into the west side of the bracket. Well, conference, Western Conference, with the Utah Jazz defeating the number 8 seed Memphis Grizzlies 4-1. Memphis officially, they won in both the 9-10 matchup, and then they defeated the Warriors, who finished as the unofficial 8 seed in the regular season in Golden State in order to earn that 8 seed. Leonard, I don't know if you got to see any of the Utah Jazz and the Memphis Grizzlies, but what would you say were some keys to that series? Obviously, Donovan Mitchell did not play in that first game that Memphis ended up winning, and then the Jazz just swept right on through into the
Yeah,
second round.
he. I guess he was very upset that he got
Yes,
held out, um,
yes,
and I guess management was like, okay, let him play the rest of the series. I did watch some of the series. Unfortunately, every time I turned it on, Utah was up by 30 points. Um, I really feel like, Utah just outmatched them. I mean, you think about it. They won two playing games to get a chance to get to play to Utah. So
mm-hmm.
in any other year, they wouldn't even be in the playoffs. So I feel like, you know, a team, I mean, the Memphis fans got to see two playoff games. I did watch a little bit on TV. That stadium was full, I believe, both times. The team has a lot of energy. John Morant is the real deal. He's fearless. The guy weighs 125 pounds or something like that. The guy's amazing. His 3-point shooting has gotten better. They are definitely moving in the right direction. And obviously, as a fan, if you're a Memphis Grizzly fan and you get beat 4-1, I guess that's called the gentleman's sweep. But that's something to build on. You can't buy playoff experience. You can't buy adrenaline feel when you go into that. So even though they lost 4-1 and they really didn't compete in most of those other four games, I really feel like it's something that Memphis can build on in the future. And they've got some young talent. I mean, they make a lot of dumb mistakes. I know the little bit of basketball I played, I know I'd be benched immediately after some of those stupid turnovers. But they're definitely on the way up. They have a good coach and they have a good core, to move forward.
And Joe, what were your thoughts on the keys to the series?
Well, I think you, I think Utah is head and shoulders above a lot of teams. Anybody can win a series, so they could go down, but they are very well coached. We talked about a little bit ago. Quinn Snyder, former Duke guy, learned, in my opinion, one of the best coaches of all time. He learned under him, Coach K. I think the big thing with Utah is there's so many ways for them to win a game, right? I mean, Mike Conley controls things. Donovan Mitchell, when healthy and on the floor, scores a lot. Just in game 2, he had 25 points, but he's liable to get steals. He's liable to have assists. He's a very good all-around player. And Rudy Gobert is somebody that people forget about sometimes. And he is such a beast down low. He gets rebounds. He had 21 in one game. But Leonard hit the nail on the head. Like, Memphis is good, but they're just not good enough to keep up with the Utah. The Jazz are just so good. And John Morant is going to be a star. They don't have enough around him right now. I mean, just think about this. He scored over 20 points in each game, and he had 47 points in one game. That's pretty good for a young kid. He needs to beef up in the weight room. They need to get him another, like I said, they really need to get him another player to complement him. But I like his game and I liked him in college. But I think the big thing is here is that Utah is as close to a finished product as they can get, and they are going to be really hard to beat, I think, in this playoffs.
And we'll jump a little more into the Jazz in the preview of the second round. Yeah, you mentioned it for Memphis. John Morant is going to be who they build around moving forward. I'd be interested to see Jaren Jackson Jr. moving forward. I know he had a lot of injuries this year, so if he can be that complimentary guy. Dylan Brooks is a very good shooter. He finished with over 25 points a game in this series. And then Jonas Valanciunas is a very good big man underneath. But, not quite for the Grizzlies. But as Leonard mentioned, that Memphis finally got to see some playoff games. It's been a long time, probably since the days of Marc Gasol when he was the main part of that team. But yes, Memphis bows out, and Utah moves to the next round to play the Los Angeles. Yeah, Joe.
I just wanted to ask you a question. I always have these thoughts, and I want to bounce off a question to you too, because you always give us good questions. I was just thinking of a guy we didn't mention, and that's Jordan Clarkson. Do you think he's going to have? You think he's going to have to step up and score 20? And Leonard, you can answer that too if you want. But just thinking about Jordan Clarkson, because he's a good shooter.
He's on my list for later on. I will definitely go into more detail later.
Luckily, I don't know that he has to. There are a ton of guys there who can score. Bogdanovich, Conley, Royce O'Neal scores 11 a game. So not necessarily, but yes, it's definitely good. Him coming off the bench, obviously. Did they give out the 6th Man of the Year award yet? Yes, I think he won it already.
Did he win it?
So he's coming off the bench. He's one of their top scorers. But yes, so Utah will be playing the LA Clippers. That was just decided yesterday on Sunday the 6th. As they defeated the Dallas Mavericks 4-3. The Clippers winning the final 2 games of that series. Joe, we'll start off with you this time. I feel like it's interesting that the Clippers won the series, but most of the talk has been around Luka Doncic, who put up monster numbers in this series.
Right. All right. Well, so we know what a kind of a star he is, and where he could go is probably, it's probably to the moon right now. He's just so good.
Pretty much.
He does so much. He does so much well, but he's so fundamentally sound, I think, that he just doesn't make mistakes, right? He's not going to turn over the ball. He scores at an alarming. Okay, I'm going to just back up my point of alarming rate. 31 points. That was game 1. And then he ended up having 39. And that was game 2. So right away in the first 2 games of the series, it's like he set the example of how to play as a scorer, right? He didn't go in saying, "Oh man, I'm nervous," or "I got all the pressure on me." No. He carried this team to almost a series win. But I know we're going to get into the question about do they need more, and we'll talk about that. I won't go there yet. I will say this though: the Clippers are scary good. Kawhi Leonard is absolutely a monster. That guy doesn't just play on one side of the ball either. He plays really good defense. And Paul George isn't bad either. 23 points in, I think it was game 1. Leonard scoring anywhere from in the mid-20s to 41. You're talking about numbers that are just incredible. I'm going to get off my soapbox, and I'm just going to say that the LA Clippers could be the team that scares the Jazz. Mark it down. The Clippers could scare the Jazz.
Leonard, what do you think about this series?
Well,
not sure how much of a Clippers fan you are here, but
I'm here on your show. I'm gonna, talk about facts. Luka's amazing. I think Dallas did a lot with very little this year. Okay. At the beginning of the year, no one thought Dallas would even be a contender. Not even. If you would have said at the beginning of the season, the Mavericks are going to be in the playoffs against the Clippers with 2 chances to knock them out, I guarantee you 1,000 people would tell you you're crazy. So they did a lot. Luka carried the team. Okay. Now, my thoughts on the Mavericks are this. They don't have a clear number 2. They have a lot of number 3s and 4s. Okay. They have players that can pose as number 2s from time to time. But for Luka to really be like, yes, Luka put up amazing numbers in Game 7. I think he had scored the 3rd most points in a Game 7 on the road. To say now it's only 9,000 fans, but still he's on the road. He's not sleeping in his own bed the night before. There's a lot that goes into that. So he did a lot. The team really didn't do a whole lot. They missed a lot of open shots. Porzingis, the unicorn as they used to call him. He's past his prime. He's a very good role player, but that's what he is. And I don't know if he's 100% back from that terrible knee injury he had about 2-3 years ago. Tim Hardaway Jr., exciting player. He had 8 points in the losses and 22 points in the wins. I think I saw that somewhere. That's not a number 2. A number 2 does not have that difference between good games and bad games. So I think Dallas definitely needs some more bodies. They need people that are going to be able to make some open shots. Luka's taking on too much, and you can tell he eventually runs out of gas. The guy, he's super young. He's very exciting. I think he can improve his 3-point shooting. Obviously we're talking about one of the best players in the NBA, so it's hard to nitpick, but I think there's always room for him improvement. He's 22 years old. The kid's scary. So I think if Dallas can get a true number 2 in the offseason, I think they could vault themselves into some some serious contention, in the next few years.
Hey, have you guys heard too that, and I know this is like a rumor out there, but Steph Curry is not happy in Golden State much anymore. So you wonder if he would think about maybe, Luka Doncic needs help, and you don't think so?
No, especially not if Klay Thompson comes back at some point. Healthy is ultimately what he wants. Now, it's come out in the past day already that Porzingis is not happy with his role in the offense. That he expected it to be, what did he say, a co-leaders of that team, as opposed to Luka being the man and him being the Robin. Well, guess what?
Come on, unicorn, make 15, 18-foot jump shots consistently, and maybe be okay. Seriously, on paper, that pick and roll should be absolutely devastating. They got Porzingis can shoot 3s. He should be able to roll to the basket. He should be able to hit mid-range jumpers. Luka's like 30 feet and in. That should be a killer pick and roll that should be almost undefensible, but it's not. You got one guy doing all the work. And look, I said, the guy's super talented for Porzingis, but again, I don't know if that knee is 100%. That may be the lingering factor, because when he played for the Knicks before he got hurt, he was unbelievable. Throwing up 30-point games, blocking shots that are way above the rim. The guy was amazing. So let's give the guy a little bit of a break, right? Yeah. He's not physically 100%, right? So, but he still has to make shots. And that's what I don't think he made enough of. And I don't think he could be a true number 2 if he can't do that. Hypothetically,
though, can we just kick around a name or 2 that we think could fit in Dallas?
Dame Lillard, Steph Curry. Let's keep throwing them out there. If you're going to throw out Steph Curry, which I think he's going to retire as a Golden State Warrior, I don't think the Warriors let him go. All right. First off, he went to the finals 5 years in a row. Clay's coming back. James Wiseman, who's very raw, but in his very limited time on the court, showed a lot of skills. 19 years old.
They got talent there. Yeah.
Very talented. Yeah. He played three college basketball games. 3.
That's it.
Okay. Then he goes to the NBA. Obviously, with COVID and not being able to practice. Let's also bring that into light here, is that the NBA did not have the ability to practice as much because of COVID restrictions. So you have young players that are not practicing. And when you're not practicing, yes, some have stayed in shape, but you know what I mean? They need more time. Golden State can. Draymond Green, I think he needs to kind of settle into a little bit of a different role, maybe get a little better on the offense. He definitely could run a team, and his assists were way high this year. I think Charles Barkley called him the single double or something like that. But so Draymond's tough as nails. I think he's definitely taken a step back from their championship run, but Steph Curry, I don't think ever leaves Golden State. Dame Lillard is a possibility because remember who owns the Mavericks. Mark Cuban is about making splashes. The guy didn't make a couple $1 billion by hitting singles. The guy's willing to go out there. I mean, think about this. We're going to talk about this later. But Trae Young and Luka were traded on draft day, right?
Right.
And at first, I'm thinking, are you kidding me? This Luka kid is amazing. But we're going to talk about later how Trae has just been amazing as well, too. So that's a situation where both teams did really well. So beyond just rambling on and on, I think that there are some players we could throw out there, but I think they're long shots. Maybe Dame if they put a great trade package together.
So we just talked about him here. We'll move on now to the 3 versus 6 matchup in the West. And that may have caught some people by surprise with a couple injuries that Denver has with their guards. But they ended up defeating Portland, the number 6 seed, 4-2 to Denver. Well, obviously, and we'll probably talk about them later, an amazing series from the most likely MVP, Nikola Jokic. But also an amazing series from Damian Lillard again, who averaged 34.3 in the series. CJ McCollum averaged 20.7. Leonard, we'll start off with you, and maybe it ends up that Damian Lillard ends up leaving and goes somewhere else. The coach was just ended up leaving, Terry Stotts. So what can be done there in Portland? Because it seems to have been Damian Lillard and McCollum for so long now. They tried bringing in Robert Covington, Carmelo, obviously way past his prime. Enes Kanter there, Nurkic, but couldn't get over the hump once again in the first round here.
Yeah. Well, I think on paper, Portland in the beginning of the season, I thought was going to be a top seed, and I really felt that they were going to contend. But unfortunately, their front court just doesn't play any defense. Kanter doesn't play defense.
Kanter does not.
Terrible. Nurkic, he's exciting. He kind of drifts in and out. There's players that overall have a great motor. And day in, day out, they're going to be there. They're going to put up their numbers. They're going to give you maximum effort. I feel like Nurkic you see the suit he came in with, like a half black and half red. So he was he was on, he came in all flashy. And then when it came out to it, really just didn't. You're going to wear a suit like that. You got to pull. You got to get like 30 that night. But anyway, I feel like they have players, and Nurkic is one of them. Obviously, he had a very bad leg injury. Guy coming off a very bad leg injury a few years back. I feel he's healthy. He doesn't play defense. Kanter doesn't play defense. Well, the Joker is, again, arguably the MVP. I think he'll be the MVP. He just dominated, and everything went through him. They were able to secure rebounds, which kept Portland out of the fast break. Denver was able to set up their offense. And it just proves that even without Murray, which I thought when he went down with an ACL injury, Denver was dead. And I think at some point in the season, they won 10 or 11 games in a row. So I feel like Denver just had more cohesion. They played better defense. Austin Rivers stepped up. I know a lot of people hate on him, obviously, because he's a son of a coach. But I really just feel like Portland, again, just can't get it right. They have certain players that just don't fit together. Robert Covington was in Philly, fantastic. And I feel like he's been bounced around. So let's obviously give him a little bit of slack for not being in the same system year after year. But yeah, and I wrote this down. I mean, McCollum, again, he's like a 2.5. He's not there all the time. And that's the thing. It's very hard. It's very hard for people like us, who never played basketball at such a high level. But you feel like you got Damian Lillard going out there making 3-pointers, scoring all these points, pulling up from the logo, and you got McCollum that he kind of drifts in and out. So I think if Portland is going to do anything, they need to either do one of two things. Either they got to trade everybody, get rid of everybody, get the most you can for Lillard and McCollum, and rebuild. Or are we one person away? I think they're like 2 players away at this point. And who knows what their coaching is going to be like. Jason Kidd was in that coaching for a hot minute. and he pulled his way back. And I think Lillard got a little bit annoyed with that. So we'll see. But yeah, Portland they got to be all in or all out, because I feel like anything else, they'll be in this. We'll be talking about this next year at the exact same spot. They'll be a first round out. Damian Lillard will post something on Twitter, and he'll have a nice little offseason to work on some new songs.
Yep, good enough to make it into the playoffs, but not good enough to get past the first round. Joe, what were your thoughts on the series between Denver and Portland?
Well, Jokic is really he's dominant. There's no doubt about it. I mean, and I think Leonard touched on a very interesting player, and that's Jamal Murray. They're a different team with him because I know he is a very good shooter. But Jokic can carry a team. The thing is, he's going to need more help. And I don't know. That's kind of where I feel like Denver might fall off. We'll talk about that in our previews. I will say this though, and I really believe this. Portland, oh boy. I mean, and again, Leonard with another really good point. How can you sit there and you have a star like Lillard who goes off, right, on nights where he's going to score 40? And CJ McCollum, even though local listeners are going to be like, oh, he went to Lehigh. He did go to Lehigh. But I always question CJ McCollum because I didn't know if he'd be overshadowed in the NBA. I didn't know if he's going to become an afterthought. And right now we're talking about Lillard needs more help. Well, if Lillard needs more help, then you just wonder if McCollum has to go. And they need to become, Lillard doesn't need just a Robin though. He needs like Superman / like he needs such a compliment that you would say it wouldn't be like peanut butter and jelly. It would be like total peanut butter. Like if that analogy makes sense, I just think Damian Lillard is so unreal that to me, you got to get him another star.
Well, Joe, to your point though, and obviously I like talking about sports because we can kind of go back and forth here.
Of course.
But Lillard is very ball dominant. He plays point guard, but he makes a lot of shots.
Right.
So sometimes when you have a McCollum who he really needs the ball in his hands to be effective, right?
Right.
Maybe, and I don't know. I mean, obviously, maybe the guys at ESPN could bring this up for us, but how many shots he averages, is he shooting in the fourth quarter? Obviously these are higher level stats, but maybe we can take a look at it and go, okay, well, is McCollum even getting enough shots to be a second player? Because, that's what they talk about some other players. I mean, again, Dame Lillard is not a Chris Paul. Chris Paul can score, but Chris Paul facilitates. Dame Lillard is a point guard, but he's scoring 34 points a game. Now, is some of that out of necessity, or is it just he's just doing his thing? So but we're both on the same page. Portland definitely needs help.
Definitely, and I think a lot of it. It's not going to be fixed with just one player. I think they need multiple players.
Nope.
Yeah, the guys that they've brought in have been almost to fill the patches of so to make sure that the hole doesn't blow up here. And I like bringing in Covington to guard the guys on the wings and the smaller big men. Okay, bringing in very older Carmelo Anthony to give us some points off the bench. All right. You said Enes Kanter. I know him from when he played in Boston the past few years. He cannot play defense whatsoever. He's a rebounder, and that's about it.
He's like one of the old sportscasters, the Matador defense. Like, go ahead.
But, maybe I'll get the rebound if you miss it.
Let's talk about this. We got to talk about this. Okay, they traded Gary Trent Jr. For Norman Powell. Okay, a good friend of mine is a Raptors fan, and Norman Powell isn't a bad player.
Right.
But Gary Trent was like, I think he's 26, 27. Norman Powell's like early 30s. So if they were both equal, which they're not, Gary Trent, I think, has a huge upside. Yeah. What are you doing? Like, to me, I felt like that trade made absolutely no sense. Now, again, I don't know if it's a salary cap or if there's, if Gary Trent had more money left. I have no idea. That stuff, I don't get paid to do that. So I don't really understand that per se. But I feel like Gary Trent was a great player. When he played, I watched him play the Lakers a lot. And every game, 25, 28, 30 points, playing good defense. I have no idea what they're getting him. Yeah, great score. And he did everything. And we talked about a motor earlier about just going all the time. He has that motor. So, I mean, I have no idea where they got rid of him. So Portland, unfortunately is on the brink. I feel like that they're not going to get players in the offseason. I think they need to just take a step back and go, well, we tried this for 8 years. It hasn't worked. Let's get as many pieces as we can and maybe do like a Boston Celtics rebuild.
We'll have to see what happens. For those that missed our top 5 current point guards in the NBA, he was my number 2. So I really would like to see them do something for him, but we'll see what happens. So Denver moves on. They will be playing the winner of the number 2 seeded Phoenix Suns or the 7 seeded LA Lakers. And as Leonard covers his face, the LA Lakers went down 4-2 to Phoenix. Well, Leonard, we'll start off with you. Obviously, we can talk about what went wrong with the Lakers, but I mean, it was the injuries. I will ask, and I wrote it down. Do we think was it as simple as the injuries, or is it something bigger with the roster?
It's a couple of things. So I think you had, starting when they won a championship, they had 72 days to end the season and begin a season. That's unprecedented. The stuff that they went through in the bubble, I know we can say, oh, they just were in Orlando, but they didn't see their families for 3 months. There's a lot of crap that was going on last year. They had a lot to deal with, okay? So you get done winning a championship, the mental and physical energy that you have to every day, right, just to get through a day, let alone play a basketball game and win it. They win it, and then 72 days later, they're starting a season again. Now, that's tough. I mean, LeBron James has played, the equivalent of 20 or 21 seasons when you add in his playoff games. And Anthony Davis, knock on wood, last year was healthy. He played a lot of games last year. I don't even know, but they had the opportunity to win championship. I think if AD and LeBron stay healthy, Drummond is never part of the team. I think Drummond was, okay, we don't have AD, we don't have LeBron. He's falling in our lap. Let's pick him up. It changed the chemistry, taking nothing away from Drummond. Cleveland sat him for, I think, 2 months before they let him go. So he wasn't really in shape. You had Schroeder, who went on 2 different COVID restrictions. I think one was because he was exposed and another time because I believe he had it. So, we don't know how lingering effects. I think they played 4 games. Schroeder, LeBron, Drummond, and AD. 4 games the entire season. So then you go into the playoffs and you're up 2-1. I mean, I watched that game 3. They dominated. I'm thinking, okay, this is good. But unfortunately, you get hurt. When AD got hurt, the whole season went down because you had players playing out of position. And then all of a sudden, players that last year could hit 3-pointers in the playoffs, they had like blindfolds on. They couldn't hit the basket. So then obviously LeBron, high ankle sprain, that you're never 100% after that for months. So it's injuries. I hate to say that. I mean, but that's part of basketball, right? So I feel it's the injuries, and the injuries cause some new players to come on the team, and then you didn't have practices. So, but let's take nothing away from Phoenix. They're an awesome team. They played well. Devin Booker, wow. I mean, there's nothing to say about the kid. He really played really well. He got a little bit, had a little issue in that one game where I think he pushed somebody under the basket out of frustration. But other than that, he was really good. I believe in game 6, he was talking about he felt Kobe in the building. So whatever. But yeah, I mean, look, the Lakers won a championship last year. I mean, I would rather them win one and go out in the first round than lose 2 Western Conference Finals in back-to-back years like many teams have done. So I'll take it. I know if they all come back healthy next year and they add a piece or 2, they'll be up there again. But no, hats off to the Phoenix Suns. They did what they had to do.
Joe, what were your thoughts?
Well, I think with the Lakers, I think injuries did play a part. I think it was Caruso and Davis that were missing time right towards the end of the season. Both those guys missed time. That hurts when Anthony Davis goes down because you're missing a big man that can do a lot. Leonard made a good point with Porzingis. Leonard, Anthony Davis is so much better, and he makes LeBron better, and it's just a whole trickle down effect. So those 2 guys were missed. Also, the injuries, like when you don't just say about injuries, I'm talking about like how about like you said too, Leonard, you just won the championship. and you're having to play a full season and not too long, after, right? So that's another. I agree with those 2 points. I wrote both those down, and you know what? It even shows in other sports as we're kind of seeing in baseball right now. I don't want to go there, but I'm just saying that that's kind of the same thing. I will say too that I think that when you win a championship and you come back with a lot of the same guys, it's tough to get motivated again to do it one more time. We saw the Bulls do it 6 times, 7 times, whatever it was. I'll tell you right now, we're not in that era because there's so much competition and so much talent, and guys flip-flop teams. You don't have a lot of loyalty to your jersey. And I think that's a big thing. And I'm not going to toot my own horn, but I picked the Suns to go all the way, at least to the championship game. So I will say that I'm kind of happy that Phoenix did win. And
I think a lot of people outside
I like Chris
Laker
Paul.
fandom wanted. I think it's just one of those things where the Lakers, when they're playing well, they're similar to the Yankees, where when they're playing well, they have a lot of haters, which is okay. And LeBron's you're in or out with him. So I get it. And I also feel like they added pieces in the offseason that just didn't fit. Again, Gasol, he missed time and he just wasn't, he's a good passer. He's a good 3-point shooter. He did none of that. He had Harrell. Now that was the biggest mystery. Harrell obviously won at 6-man. He comes over to the Lakers. He's playing really well. I like his game. You get Drummond, and then they can't coexist on the court at the same time, right? So Frank Vogel's thinking, okay, let me get Drummond because I don't have practices anymore. Let me get Drummond in the game. Before you look up, there's 5 minutes to go, and Harrell's still sitting on the bench in his warmups. He's not happy, and it's a player option, so he's out. He's not coming back next year, and it's a shame because I really like him. I really thought he was a piece that could be on a championship team. Maybe he'll go to Dallas or Portland like we were talking about.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. I was looking up the transactions this past offseason, and do I necessarily like what they did? I don't. Getting rid of Danny Green, who ended up going to Philadelphia. Who else? JaVale McGee ended up leaving.
Well, Danny Green was traded because they needed to have a ball handler to take pressure off of LeBron. That I think Schroeder was a good pick. I mean, obviously, if he wouldn't have had the COVID issues, I think he would have had a better season. But yeah, Wesley Matthews, I mean, he really didn't perform. These guys had career 3-point shooting years last year, and for them to do it back-to-back years. Caruso, I feel like he has a lot of Derek Fisher characteristics, but one thing Derek Fisher was able to do is hit clutch 3-point shots. When it was Kobe in the middle and Shaq, kick it out, and Derek was always in that, I don't know, 7 o'clock spot or whatever, and he could make shots. Caruso, I love his tenacity. He's a great defender. He's a great locker room guy. But if I were him, he needs to shoot 1,000 jump shots a day. He really needs to improve that. If he does, then coming back next year when he's open, maybe he can bring that 3-point percentage up a little bit.
So, Joe, we will move on to the East here, where we had the number 1 seed, Philadelphia 76ers, and the number 8 seed, Washington Wizards. The Wizards lost their 8-9 game against the Boston Celtics, who ended up taking the 7th seed. And then they ended up winning their home game against the Charlotte Hornets. So, Joe, obviously the Sixers won 4-1. That was not really close. The one game that the Washington pulled out, obviously they have the duo of Beal and Westbrook. And we've talked about it on the show, how all the stats that Westbrook puts up, and they don't seem to be winning too many games when that's happening. But do we think that the Beal-Westbrook dynamic can coexist to ultimately get Washington far in the East, or does maybe one of them have to leave? Do they have to bring in more players? What do we think?
If I were Washington, I would say that I would hang on to Beal because I think Beal is such a good the guy can score at will, and he has such a great outside shot. Westbrook, to me, if you keep Westbrook and you let go of Beal, then you're kind of saying, well, we know Westbrook goes to the basket. We know he gets fouled. He'll do everything to get points, but he's a detriment, I think, in a way, because he takes away. He needs talk about ball dominant. That guy needs the ball in his hands.
Yeah.
You get taught early on in your basketball life that it's coaches in high school love to see when you don't touch the ball, right? Well, he's the opposite of that. He always needs the ball. So to me, keep Beal, maybe trade Westbrook, get something back for him. You might get a little more than something. He's a good player, but you can't get rid of Bradley Beal. He's too good. And if you keep both of them, then you're kind of running the risk of getting another player, and they can't beef up too much in the draft. They're just gonna have to. Yeah, they're gonna have to. I think they trade Westbrook. I think that's what they're gonna have to do. Leonard, do you agree?
I'm going to say that they keep both players, and this is why. Because when you go out in the open market, who are you going to get back for Westbrook? You're going to get 2 or 3 parts, and they're not going to be Westbrook. They're not going to be that player. And Westbrook is a veteran, and we can talk about he's crazy. He's a maniac, but he always brings it. Okay, always brings it. And I think with Beal, he scores a lot, but I think it's that other guy on the team that Beal can turn and look and go, okay, I respect you. You have some cachet. You've been to the finals, although very early in his career. I respect you. You go trade him. You bring in a couple young players. First off, Bradley Beal is in his prime right now. If you don't give him players, he's out. And now you're going to rebuild and you're 3-4 years behind. So I think this can work. I think Westbrook has been on some teams that haven't really been. They've been a little snake bitten. I mean, they were up. He played on a Thunder team that was up 3-1 on the Golden State Warriors, and they lost. So the guy can play. The guy has a motor. He gives a crap. And I think that's part of the problem with a lot of players right now. They go in and out. They don't really care. They care about Instagram. They care about, think about it. Back in the day, I got the gray hair to prove it. Back in the day, watching the 90s, and these players would not be signing sneakers and giving each other jerseys. No, they would, okay, good game, and that'd be it, right? They're two friends. Westbrook, he'll cut your heart out, right? So he's very old school. He definitely gives that team an edge. I think Washington can add some players. And you think about where they were about a third of the way through the season, they were left for dead. And then they end up in these playoff, the play-in game, and they get into this game, and then they stole a game from the Sixers, which that happens. The Sixers were, and then I think Embiid got hurt towards the end of that game that they lost. So they got that one game, but I think Washington is doing some stuff right. But again, if you trade Westbrook, then you are not going to get back equal. His contract is crazy. So some teams are going to have to eat the contract. And again, that gets into stuff way above my pay grade. I don't understand caponomics, when it comes to this NBA stuff, but you keep them, you add them, and you keep Bradley Beal happy. Cause really he was, it's funny because Bradley Beal had a comment about halfway through the season. I saw it on Instagram. He says, we can't even guard a parked car right now. And I think to me, that was one of the funniest things. When I was preparing for this show, I wrote that down. I'm like, oh my God. So I think they need some time, get some defense, keep that team together. I don't know. Unless you're trading Westbrook for Damian Lillard, I can't see, them getting anything back that's going to be worth it.
Yeah, they by the way, they gave up 123 points per game in that series. So yeah.
Was that it?
I don't.
Okay. Well, a little defense then.
I don't mind. I don't mind the team. I like Hachimura. I like Davis Bertans. He can shoot. Thomas Bryant, who got hurt maybe like 10 games into the season, he was really coming into his own a little bit. Big center from Indiana.
He's the next Laker. And I did not like when LA gave him up. I think he's a very underrated player and could easily get 17, 18 points a game and 10 rebounds. So him coming back healthy, I think is going to be a big add to that team.
Yeah, I like the team and Ish Smith, okay, and guys like Robin Lopez who have been around, but I think they give it another go. Maybe they bring in, so they're going to be mid-round or the first round. Maybe they bring in decent talent to be a consistent 3 scorer, but I think Hachimura can put up 15 a game. We'll have to see. We'll see. I don't know if they'll be any higher than maybe the 6th in the East or anything like that, but we'll see what moves that they end up making. And we'll talk about Philadelphia in just a little bit. The winner of, or Philadelphia was going to be playing the winner of the number 4 seeded New York Knicks and the number 5 seeded Atlanta Hawks. I guess this one was kind of a coin flip going into the series, but it definitely did not turn out that way. It was definitely a one-sided series, and Atlanta came out with the 4-1 series win against the New York Knicks. You saw Madison Square Garden was really riled up in those series, but ultimately, and I believe Spike Lee ended up leaving early in one of those games. They were talking about it.
It's a Nick playoff game. Nick playoff game, first one like 8 or 9 years. He should stay the whole time. I mean, those front row seats are 20,000 or whatever.
And Leonard, they were talking about it a lot that Trae Young was kind of playing the villain a little bit, and he went off in that series.
I love it. What I tell you about too many players like just being chummy. He embraces that. And I'll tell you, I don't know his physical stature, but the guy definitely plays they say punch above your weight. He definitely does that. I love Trae Young. I am a huge fan of his. Can't wait to watch the rest of the series, which hopefully will be 6 or 7 games.
Yeah. Well, Leonard, we'll jump into the Knicks there, and now the Knicks were, if not the best defensive team in terms of points per game during the regular season. They were at least in the top 3, but I believe they were number 1, and that couldn't quite do it for them. They couldn't put the ball in the basket is what seemed to be the issue in this series. Julius Randle was by far the most improved player this year, but I guess the question is, they obviously need to bring in someone. Derrick Rose, I think, was just beat by the end of that series. Is Julius Randle, can he be a number 1? That seems to be the big question people are asking.
Rhodes, he was one of the Lakers that was drafted and played with Kobe Bryant. And Julius Randle has said many times his time with Kobe was there's nothing you can really say. He really learned a lot, and Kobe really was a good influence on him. So Julius worked hard, and I feel this year he played to the absolute best he could play. I don't think he left anything out there this year. And I'm happy for him because he's finally playing up to his potential. Is he a number 1? Not yet. He played like a number 1 this year, but a number 1 goes into the playoffs and plays well. Now, I think they exposed, when you're playing, different teams on a nightly basis, you don't see the person, every other day. So Atlanta plays in game 1. They're playing every other day. They realize that Julius Randle still goes left all the time. He's a lefty. So they're trying to crowd the left hand. They're doubling him, and they took away a lot of his effectiveness. His scoring wasn't terrible, but his field goal percentage was not that good. Turnovers. He just never looked comfortable. But Atlanta knew that. Atlanta knew Nate McMillan is coaching them right now. Nate McMillan, old Seattle Supersonic, played next to Gary Payton, great defensive player. I mean, obviously, he was one of those perfect role players that helped Seattle get to the finals. They took that away, and New York didn't have another player that could step up. And their roster is super young. And I looked earlier today, and they were at 22.5 wins was like the plus minus in the preseason. So going in, they were thinking that they were just going to be a basement dweller again. So maybe they're a year ahead of schedule, right? Which is a good thing. They get into the playoffs. They played 5 games. They got that experience. Some of these players, I think Julius Randle says, because he was playing in the Garden with no fans, the fans actually were bothering them, believe it or not, because they were just, chattering and they're loud and everything else. So I think this was a great season for the Knicks. I think they go into next year. I think now players that are thinking about making a move in free agency, they're looking at New York now. They never looked at New York before. The Knicks, the last how many years? Ever since Carmelo left, they really haven't had a consistent star. So I think New York did everything right this year. They just played a team that's red hot. I mean, look at what they did yesterday. Trae Young is amazing. They have parts that work. Again, you can assemble a roster on a piece of paper, or you can put them on a basketball court. And I think the Atlanta Hawks have a lot of different pieces, but they all fit well together.
Joe, what were your thoughts on the series? Did you get to see, if you got to see any of the Knicks in Atlanta?
I didn't, but I will say this. I said it before, and I think Julius Randle and RJ Barrett are going to be a very tough duo. Both guys coming from blue blood schools in Duke and Kentucky. Barrett from Duke, of course, and Randle from Kentucky. They're talented. I mean, Barrett's not going to give you 30 or 40 a game probably, but he's going to give you a lot of effort. He's going to score. I mean, he had 14. Yeah, he looked like he had 21 in the other game. But Randall's the guy that's going to get you those points inside. He's going to get you the elbow jumper. And RJ might end up becoming better scorer as he gets older. I just think this is what he is right now, and he's in the mid-teens. I'll tell you, the Knicks, and one of you guys said it before, which is a great point. These guys will be joined with somebody in the near future. One or two guys are going to be coming in, and it's going to help them grow like incredibly. I was in Preston. He's had a pretty good run of it too with New York. So they're just they're in a tough league with these teams, so they're going to have to do some things. And but yeah, Nate McMillan, I remember watching him when I was younger with Seattle, and they'll be fine. They'll be fine. The story is Atlanta, and Leonard said it. Trae Young is so talented, such a great shooter. We'll get into it with the Sixers later, but yeah, Atlanta's gonna be tough, and they got more than Trae Young. That's for sure.
Yeah, and I really like how the Knicks are setting up their roster. That would be a place that I would love. I don't know if they have the assets, but that would be a place I would love to see Damian Lillard go and play. Playing next to Randall and RJ Barrett. I truly think that they could make some noise in the East. And let's not forget Mitchell Robinson, who was out most of this year, is a very good inside piece and shot blocker for the Knicks that they'll have back next year. Obi Toppin never really broke out, never really found his spot in this offense yet, but give him some time. Emmanuel Quickly, another young guy who he hit some big shots in some of those games. But I like the Knicks going forward, but yeah, you said it. We said it in the beginning of the season, Joe. I really liked the Atlanta roster going into the season. I thought that they really Trae Young, and then they had those couple shooters, Herter, Bogdanovich. They have the mid-range guy with Collins, the 3-and-D guy with Hunter, and then Capella, the force in the middle. I really liked how they set up that offense, but we'll talk about them in a little bit.
Yeah, they're very excellent. Oh, also keep in mind too with the Knicks, they got the right coach. Tibbs,
yes,
a long time. He was the assistant or defensive coach, if you could say it again, with the Celtics in the late 2000s when they won a championship and went to another finals. If those young kids listen to him and Tibbs can make some decisions, I know with New York there's some outside influences. If they can listen to him, they can buckle down.
Yeah,
they will be good because Tibbs will require maximum effort. I know he's had some players he's coached in the past that have whined and complained about that. But I really feel like Tibbs is a great coach, and they're fundamentally sound, and they will get the other stuff. I mean, they're young kids. And again, with the lack of practice and the COVID restrictions from last year, there's a lot going on. So I think the Knicks, if you would have told Knicks fans you're going to win as many games, you're going to be the 4th seed, you're going to have 2 playoff games in Madison Square Garden, actually 3.
3.
And 3 games in the Madison Square Garden, you're going to have all this. They would take it. They would take it and run. So it's, you don't want your team to lose, but every single team except for one loses their last game. So I feel like the Knicks are in a good place. Even though they lost, I think that they got the most they could out of this season.
So we'll move on here to two series that were more one-sided as well. Number 3 seed in Milwaukee Bucks and the number 6 seed Miami Heat. That was a clean sweep. The Bucks came out and maybe a little bit surprising since the Heat ended up making the NBA Finals last year in the COVID season, but they ended up getting swept by the Bucks. Joe, what were your thoughts? We'll start off with you. What were your thoughts on the Bucks and Heat series that ended up not being very close? There were a couple blowouts in that series.
Well, we talked about the situation with the Lakers. I think the Heat kind of suffered the same thing. They were in the finals, and so that could be one reason we saw that. But Milwaukee is, again, ultra talented. Giannis Antetokounmpo is one of the best players in the NBA. He does it all. He actually, in game 3, I think it was, he had in game 1, he had 26 points, 5 assists, 18 rebounds at a double-double. That's amazing. But Chris Middleton is very, very good. He gets to the basket. He scores. He could drop 30 on the easy. I would have liked to see Bledsoe stay because I think they miss him a little bit. I mean, he's doing well, I guess, in New Orleans. But I know they don't. I mean, DiVincenzo, he's a guy that they can count on, a Villanova guy that again came from a really good program and knows how to play the game. I just think it's going to be about Antetokounmpo. It really is. But I wouldn't sleep on them. I wouldn't sleep on Milwaukee at all. I know the Nets are a sexy pick. I know the Sixers are definitely a pick if they get past Atlanta. I don't know. I just think I'll be interested to see what Leonard has to say about Milwaukee. I don't have much more. I just know Middleton and Antetokounmpo is how they run usually.
Leonard, do we want to jump into? Well, let's jump into Miami real quick, and we'll talk.
Yeah,
about
I can talk
Milwaukee.
about Miami. I think Miami did have, obviously they had a little bit of a hangover from last year. I mean, Jimmy Butler, I remember him in one of his like 40-20 games he had in the finals or some stupid crazy numbers. He went to the basket, he got fouled, and he was leaning over. That's like sweat, like literally the guy gave everything, right?
Yeah.
So, and that young team that, I mean, obviously with Bam, you got Duncan Robinson. You have a lot of great players on that team. And this year, they did okay. They started slow. They built it back up. But here's the thing. They beat down the Bucks last year. The Bucks were the favorites. They came in like, nope, you're out of here. I think it was 4-1. I wrote this down, revenge. This was a revenge series. Milwaukee improved in the offseason. They got their true number 2, Drew Holiday. Chris Middleton's a good player. He's a solid player, but he's, again, that 2.5 to 3 player. Chris Middleton's, I think he was one of the few players to shoot 90 from the line, 50 from the field, and 40 from 3. I believe he either this year or last year. The guy's talented, don't get me wrong, but again, he's not that number 2. They get Drew Holiday. They traded Eric Bledsoe for Drew Holiday. I personally think that was highway robbery. I really think Drew Holiday is an amazing player. And I think he's added so much to that team. And then you have some, okay, so then you need some beef in the middle. You have an enforcer. You got PJ Tucker. I mean, this guy is just, he goes to work with his lunch pail. The old school guy called lunch pail guy. He just goes in there and he's definitely toughened that team up. He shoots the corner 3 very well. And he's a great locker room guy. So I feel like those additions to Milwaukee has turned them from a early out last year to potentially a finals team because, they play some good defense. And really what it's going to come down to is matchups in the next round if they get further down the line. I really feel like, they just beat down Miami. Miami has a good future. I mean, look, they have an advantage of having Pat Riley and having amazing weather. And who the heck doesn't want to live in Miami and play for Pat Riley? And also Eric Spoelstra, if not the best coach in the NBA. I think he does year after year. He took a team last year to the NBA Finals that not one expert would have had them even getting out of the first round. He does. Now, granted, he had LeBron and a guy named Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh for a little bit too. But I think since that era has ended, they have put together some really solid teams, very professional coach. I think he's a lifer. I don't think he'll ever leave Miami. So look, this is a blip in the radar. Miami's going to retool. They'll lick their wounds. They'll patch themselves up, and I think they'll be top 4, top 3 team next year.
Yep, I think that I absolutely agree. I'll get another one. On paper, you would have thought that series would have gone 7, but yeah, Hero and Robinson, they were good this year, and Kendrick Nunn, and they were good, but
oh, I forgot. We got to mention Kendrick Young. He came out, but there's something to be said in sports. When you're unknown, you can sneak up on people. They didn't sneak up on anyone this year because they beat Milwaukee, they beat the Celtics, and they played. Even though they lost to the Lakers in 6 games, they were very competitive games for the most part. That last game got way out of hand, but they were competitive. So when you're the unknown, people are going to look past you. Everyone this year knew they were a good team. So there's something to be said about that. These players that didn't really have much scouting tape on them from last year, other teams watched them and studied them, and Milwaukee improved. I mean, obviously Miami took a little bit of a step back, but Milwaukee definitely improved. And again, you had the revenge factor. I really feel that they went in there seeing blood. They wanted to really just make a statement and put the rest of the NBA on notice, like, oh, this is not the old school Milwaukee Bucks. We got there's a new sheriff in town, as they say.
And so the Bucks will be playing. Well, they were playing the winner of the number 2 seeded Brooklyn Nets and then number 7 seeded Boston Celtics. Boston did not really stand much of a chance, except for the game that Jason Tatum had to put up 50 in order for them to win. 4 games to 1, Brooklyn ended up pulling away with it. I'll talk briefly that for those that don't know, I am a Celtics fan, so I never thought that they were going to play in this series. So
I'm leaving the meeting. I'm just kidding.
It's all right. Once Jaylen Brown went down, I knew that they weren't playing well to begin with, so it didn't much matter. I don't know about Kemba Walker as an option number. He just can't stay healthy, unfortunately. I love Marcus Smart. He is one of the best perimeter defenders in basketball. I mentioned to Joe before, one of those guys who you hate him if he's not on your team, but you love him if he's on your team. Yeah. Leonard, I'll jump to you then. I'm very obviously Danny Ainge is now gone.
Yeah.
So, I really don't know. Brad Stevens is going to be jumping into that role and untested in that role. I don't know if we can declare Danny Ainge's job a success or not. I mean, yes, they won with that big 3 with Ray Allen, Kevin Garnett, and Paul Pierce, but they had a ton of draft picks lined up for these past few years, and they got Tatum out of it. They got Jaylen Brown out of it. And what else? I mean,
Smart too.
And Smart, yeah. And well, what were your thoughts on the series in general?
Well, I mean, the series, they were a wounded animal, the Celtics going in. Again, they tried. They put the absolute maximum effort out there. The Nets were just a better team. Sometimes the team is just better. You have 3 potential Hall of Famers playing very well. So they stood no chance. But to talk about the Celtics and with Danny Ainge, he left because of health reasons. I mean, here's the thing, though. He set the Celtics up to have as many bullets in the gun as possible, right?
Mm-hmm.
He shot and missed, but there's plenty of teams that shoot and miss. We could probably have a whole show on NBA draft busts that were absolute winners, gonna be great, and they turn out to be a disaster, right? But I feel like the Celtics have a core of 3 players with Smart, with Brown, and with Tatum that any team would take. Any team. Mm-hmm. When Anthony Davis was on the trading block, they wanted Brown and they wanted, they wanted Tatum. Of course, they turned that down. But I think they have a good group of those 3 players. Now, they need some players inside that are developing. They did draft some big guys. They're unpolished. Okay, they're that diamond in the rough right now. but you have a couple of them, right? So all you need is like one to be okay. Now, but also, they're just they need some more players that can with definitely some length and can play some defense. I mean, I really don't feel like the way the team is currently constructed that they can win. So you know what? I'm going to surprise you guys, and I'm going to pull out a potential free agent that I guarantee no one's really going to talk about. He played this past year for the Sacramento Kings with Sean Holmes, 14-7, almost 2 blocks a game, 63% field goal, almost 80. I think it was 79.6 from the free throw line. Okay. Now that guy is in a position where he played in Sacramento on a bad team and he put up those numbers, a young guy. Bring him on. You have Tatum, you have Brown. I think that would be one of those sleeper free agencies that literally you're looking at ESPN late at night, like, oh, who the hell is that guy? And pretty soon he may be a 20-10 guy. So I think they need to look at their roster, and I really need to basically take those 3 players that they have, some of their big guys, and get rid of some of those other parts. Now it's really going to determine they don't have a coach right now. So they need to find a coach, and they need to find a coach as soon as possible, because that's going to determine drafts, free agency. You know what I mean? And there's been a little bit, not turmoil, but there's some they're kind of on shaky ground right now. I feel like a few years ago, I'm thinking that the Celtics and Lakers are going to be playing in the NBA Finals, right? Have a rematch of the rematch, right? But the Celtics just, again, they were up and then they came back down. Hopefully Jaylen Brown can recover 100%. They get a good coach, maybe pick up one of those players that can pick up cheap. I mean, I think I looked at Rashawn Holmes. I think he made $3 million or $4 million last year. I mean, it's a lot of money, but to an NBA player, that's barely league minimum. So I think the Celtics can recover. Obviously, there's something to be said about the Boston Garden, or they call it the TD Garden right now.
TD, yes.
TD, yes. I almost got rid of that bank. I have them for my checking account. I almost got rid of them after 08. I was so mad. I was about to go in there to close my account out. But I'm okay. Day later, I calmed down. But no, we could go back and forth with Celtics, Lakers probably for days. But no, the Celtics aren't that far away from getting right back into the mix. But they got to get a coach, and they got to get a coach, very, very quickly, if they're going to fast track their season.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you mentioned the center, because geez whiz. It's like they've ignored that position for just years, and it drove me insane.
Hey, you know what?
Tristan Thompson,
if Drummond doesn't stay with the Lakers, if Drummond doesn't stay with the Lakers,
I wanted them to get Drummond when he was available, when he was just sitting, but they didn't want to go after him. They brought in Jabari Parker, and I was, oh my goodness. Well,
hasn't he been out of the league? I mean, no offense, the guy had a crazy, I think it was an ACL or an Achilles injury early in his career that totally derailed him. Was he a Duke guy?
Yes, he was.
Yes, he
was.
Duke?
Yeah. I remember watching him in college. He's a good player. Yeah. Some players just, they just get hurt early on and they never recover. It could be a mental thing too.
I think he hit his ceiling too. I think he was a very good scorer, but he wasn't that guy that again was going to drop 30, right? He was just a very good average player, Yeah. Rashawn Holmes, I like that though. I always tell Derek when I think of players, I actually used him in NBA 2K, and he's pretty good at the game.
Really?
Yes.
I thought I would close you guys away.
No.
I didn't get you guys.
He rebounds well, and he shoots the ball well. And you're right. Yeah. That was a great analysis, Leonard, of Rashawn Holmes. Yeah.
I mean, the internet's a great thing.
Well, we're about an hour in here, so we're going to finish the rest of the time talking about our second round preview. Now, a couple today being Monday, a couple games have already started, a couple series. Philadelphia and Atlanta had their game one, Brooklyn and Milwaukee had their game one, and then Phoenix and Denver have their game one tonight. But first, Joe, let us start off with you. We will start off with the 1-4 matchup, and the Utah Jazz and the LA Clippers in the West. Give us a couple key matchups to look out for, maybe an X factor, and who ultimately do you believe wins the series?
All right, so a key matchup, I said, I'm looking at the point guard matchup of Mike Conley and I think Patrick Beverley is the other point guard, right?
Reggie Jackson.
Okay,
No.
Reggie.
Is it
Is it
Reggie?
Reggie?
Is it Reggie Jackson?
I can't
off
remember
top of
who's.
my head.
I
I'll
mean,
let
the
you know in a
Clippers are
few seconds.
never. Yeah, the Clippers are never on our time. They're always on late. So I would never be able to see a Clippers game.
Well, that's a good thing with the Lakers getting knocked out. I don't have to go to bed at 1:15 in the
There you
morning.
go.
Either I'm really, really pumped up or really pissed off. And I'm like,
I know.
I gotta eat a bowl of ice cream or just celebrate. I don't know what the heck. So
I
at least
hear
that's
you.
over with.
No, I got you. When our team's playing the West Coast, and you have a West Coast team, so that's gotta be rough.
It's brutal.
Derek, did you get that then?
Yes, it is Reggie Jackson. Yes, I was right.
Okay. So Reggie Jackson. I just think that's important because those guys have to get everybody involved. They got to set the tempo.
Don't forget about Rondo is there too.
And veteran Rajon Rondo. That's been everywhere.
Yes.
Jackson can score too. So like him and Conley kind of mirror each other. They're very similar players. I will say that's a matchup I look out for. Listen, the X factor has got to be Donovan Mitchell. He scores just as much as anybody. The Clippers have to shut him down. I have a feeling Kawhi Leonard would probably play him, so that could spell trouble for Mr. Mitchell, I would think. You think they're going to put – or Paul George, right?
Probably both.
Probably both. Maybe you'll mix of both. I think the Jazz could feel a little 1-seed pressure here. Again, they're facing a good team in L.A., Utah's been the talk of the town. We've talked about him a lot on this show. But what about the big man? The guy that I want to slap in the face after he touched the microphones before COVID really started, Rudy Gobert. Bad choice, Rudy. Bad choice, but good play.
Look, I think we all could be, if we were all on video or tape every single day, especially over the last year and a half, we may have said a one or two things that made, come back to bite us, right? So,
right. No, I know.
I think he was very apologetic. I think he's a good guy. He made a mistake, and obviously, I think he's owned it. So I'm okay with that. I mean,
all right.
People make mistakes, but
Leonard, you corrected me. I like it. I like it, Leonard. Donovan Mitchell. And
I won't touch my mic, I promise. No, I'm kidding.
Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert, I think, are the keys, though. If Utah wins, that's why Mitchell, Gobert. And I go back to the bench X factor, Jordan Clarkson. I think he can become very important. So, and by the way, Jazz win in 5.
Wow. Okay.
Well, that's bold. That's bold.
What do you think, Leonard?
Okay. All right. I'm on. Great. Okay.
You're on.
So Utah, the X factor for me is Joe Ingles. That guy just seems to never do anything wrong. I don't know. He doesn't run that fast. He's just kind of out there. He's got a great lefties. First off, lefties just, I think, have like the best looking jump shot. I know it's weird, but the guy just plays hard. He's one of those guys he'll score 8 points, 15 assists one game, 15 points, 5 assists, couple steals, plays good defense. That's why I feel like that's an X factor. In my mind, an X factor isn't something that jumps off the page or a casual fan will know about. That's just kind of my definition of an X factor.
Gotcha.
So I'm going to go with Joe Ingles. I think if he plays well, I'm thinking plus or minus 14-point average. If he averages more than 14, they win the series. If he averages less than 14, I think they lose the series.
Oh, wow.
So let's see. This is on video, so you can come back. Hey, look, all these crazy announcers that get paid millions of dollars, they say a lot of dumb stuff, right? Charles Barkley, I love him to death, but oh my God, he's worse than a weatherman.
Oh, he's terrible.
So I'll just say 14 points. I don't think that. I don't know what I looked it up on my phone right now. I don't know what he averaged. I have no idea. I'm just going off the eye test, as they say.
Yeah.
So that's Utah. Utah plays the best team game. They had 7 guys in double figures this year. Jordan Clarkson, another ex-Laker, playing well somewhere else. He's definitely come into his own. He's definitely a do-it-all off the bench. So I think he's really going to be really good. For the Clippers, I almost said the Celtics. The Clippers, I think it really comes down to, I'm going to say you're going to have to get some really good production out of Reggie Jackson if they're going to win the series. Without him, I think they're dead in the water because it's easy to say Kawhi. It's easy to say Paul George, right? Those guys are going to be between 50, 55 points a game. They're going to play great defense. I think Paul George I think he's gotten over some of the playoff issues. And I feel like if they would have lost that game on Sunday, I think that team implodes. I think it's over. So thank God they won. But I think you're going to have definitely Reggie Jackson play well. And then you may have to get like a guy named Nicholas Batum, who actually was an ex-Portland Trailblazer. I think he's got to step up. So that's my thinking. I'm thinking, and I'm going to pick the Jazz to win in 7 games. I just like the team game of the Jazz. I like the way they play defense. I'm taking nothing away from Tyronn Lue. I think Utah, Quinn Snyder, I think is head and shoulders above Tyronn Lue when it comes to coaching, defense, strategy behind everything. So I'm going to go with the Jazz in 7.
I'm going to be very simple here. I believe I mentioned it on our overall preview show of the NBA playoffs. The Utah Jazz, I believe, set a record for how many threes that they scored this year. They lived by the 3. Now, the Clippers give up 11.6 threes per game during the regular season, and that looks like around 35% from 3. If they can stop the 3-pointer, and I believe, if I recall, I remember that was Alabama, right, Joe? Alabama played that way in the NCAA tournament. They shot a lot of threes. They lived by the 3, and there they went. There go the Utah Jazz.
It's a little different. It's a little different when you have 6 of those 7 players shooting 3-pointer. Obviously, Rudy's going to live in the middle, right? So you have 6 players. Are you trying to tell me that all 6 or 5 or 4 are going to be off on one night? When you have balanced scoring, it's a little bit different than if you're relying on 2 or 3 players. I think they're the most balanced team in the league. And if they were going, there were 72 games this year. If they were consistently good from behind the arc. So I don't believe, and again, I don't live in the stats book, but I feel like they were consistent all year from 3. And if one person wasn't hitting it, and they got you got Rudy that takes up a lot of space inside on offense and defense. So a lot of those 3-pointers, like if we had like a stat team that could research this, how many of the 3-pointers that Utah took this year was basically uncontested, which I believe the NBA defines an uncontested 3 as someone not within 4 feet of you, right? Mm-hmm. So I would, without having any information, I would say they probably just didn't lead the league in 3-point makes, but also uncontested threes because of Connolly driving into the lane, because of Gobert being down, because of Donovan Mitchell being a guy you have to double. Most teams can't play him straight up. So that's where I think Utah is going to continue to shoot 3-pointers because they have the right pieces. Again, we talked about this at the top of the show where they just seem to have the best team and they all fit well together.
And I absolutely agree. I love their offense. I've watched a couple games here in the end of the regular season and in this season or in the postseason. I love their offense. They're one of the most fun to watch because they constantly move the ball and they hit that open man. I am strictly saying, I think we're going to see Joe to just say, I think we are going to see more of Patrick Beverley in this series than I think we did in the last series. I like Patrick Beverley, Paul George, and Kawhi Leonard all as very good wing defenders. Are they going to shut everyone down? I don't think so. But I like the defense that they're going to bring. I like the scoring that they can put up. I feel better if we can get more out of Serge Ibaka this series. He only played average 9 minutes. He's coming off of injury.
I thought he was in witness protection. I thought he signed his paperwork to go. He's been non-existent.
So we'll see. I know the big men, they kind of went with a smaller lineup against because I think Porzingis was really the 5 and Kleber, who isn't that big either. So they could go with Batum and Marcus Morris as their big men. But now I think you're going to see more of Zubac. You're going to see more, maybe DeMarcus Cousins make a showing. I don't know, but maybe Ibaka comes out. I don't know. They were my finals pick, right? So
I'm going to say this:
stick with it.
They have to go that far to the bench. If they're like, okay, DeMarcus, you go in the game, if they're down by 30 or up by 30, he's not playing. He's
no.
He's another guy that got derailed because of injuries. That guy come out of college, his first 4 or 5 years in the league, amazing. But DeMarcus Cousins, if you're relying on DeMarcus Cousins and Serge Ibaka to win this series for you, then you might as well just punch your ticket. You're out. Another non-Western Conference final appearance. If they're going to win, and this is the problem with Patrick Beverley, we got plus or minus, what are we talking about? Four technical fouls in a 7-game series, I think, plus or minus. He's terrible from 3-point range. He is offense. I think personally, I think he's a little bit more of a distraction than a benefit. Reggie Jackson has to play. He's got to hit 3-pointers. He's got to space because Utah is going to crush them defensively. Because if you can't shoot 3-pointers in that series, if you're the Clippers, it's going to be a problem. So yes, Patrick Beverley, he does play good defense, but he's an offense liability. I think you have the defense in Paul George and Kawhi Leonard. I think putting Patrick Beverley in a game over a long period of time, I think is going to hurt them.
Reggie Jackson needs to dial back to his Piston days and score the basketball.
Yeah, I think when he plays under control, I think he's a very good player. I mean, obviously he's a 3 or a 4. He's a great role player, but I think when he gets to, when he's taking 3-pointers very early in the shot clock, I like what you said, Joe, earlier. It's like when you're in high school and college, like, what are you doing without the basketball? Right. I think when he can get 3-pointers from the flow of the offense than just coming down and jacking them up, I think he's a much more efficient player. So I think if the Clippers are going to beat the Utah Jazz, I think that Reggie Jackson's going to have to play. He's going to have to play well and let the game come to him, not force anything. Because Utah, it doesn't take long for a 5-point lead to be a 15-point lead with Utah. Yeah. And you get to Utah, and those fans are going to be they're going to be loud. That building is very loud, and now they're going to play the Clippers. Yeah, I think, it's Reggie Jackson. It's Reggie Jackson or bust. I think if he doesn't play well in this series, the Clippers have absolutely no chance.
So we will move on here to the second game in the second round in the West. We have the number 2 seed Phoenix Suns versus the number 3 seed Denver Nuggets. For those that don't know, the Nuggets did win the regular season series 2-1. How many of those games did Jamal Murray play? I don't know. How many of those games did Burton play? I don't know. But Leonard, we'll start off with you. The first game is tonight on Monday. Keys, X factors, who wins between Phoenix and Denver?
I think Denver played great in the last round. I think as you go further in the playoffs, Denver was able to mask some of the inefficiencies with missing 2 starters in the last round. In this round, I think it's going to be a lot more challenging. So I think Denver is another well-coached team. The Joker, most likely an MVP candidate. I think the way the Phoenix Suns shot the ball the last series, Chris Paul avoided a disastrous injury. He seems like he's healthy. You got, the role players. You got Ayton, which I'm telling you, going into that series, I'm thinking Ayton's good, but he really plays very good defense. I don't know what he shot field goal wise. You swear he was 7 for 8 almost every game, right? So he doesn't miss very much. He's getting his 15, 18 points a game. He's playing good on defense. I think Denver is going to have to rely on Michael Porter Jr. to have a great series, not a good series, but a great series in order for them to win. So Denver has to play, I think, a near perfect series to win. I think Phoenix coming off, you slay that giant, you beat the Lakers. I know they were a wounded animal, but you still beat the Lakers. You beat the defending champions in their building. You embarrassed them. You're riding high. Chris Paul's a great leader. He's tough as nails. I circled the guy by the name of Cameron Payne, who plays for Phoenix. And that kid, he is good. I mean, I think, you look at some players and they may score 8 points in a game. You're like, he didn't play so well. Cameron Payne affects the game a lot of different ways. Like Joe said again, what are you doing without the basketball? So I really feel like Cameron Payne is the X factor for Phoenix. I think Phoenix will win the series in 6 games. I think Denver will play well. But the Joker can only do so much, right? And I think they're going to be able to play different players on him. And hey, we got another Villanova guy, Bridges, playing for Phoenix.
Yep.
good two-way player, defensive and good three-point shooter. So yeah, I think Phoenix, with the leadership of Chris Paul, with the health of their team, with Devin Booker playing the best he's ever played, I think they win the series. Denver puts up a good fight. Joker probably averages like 30, 10, and 8, shoots 50, 60% from the field. But I think it's just, in the end, Phoenix is just too much for the Nuggets.
Joe?
Well, I do think that Jokic and Ayton are going to be the matchup to watch out for underneath. That's going to be interesting because Ayton is one of those guys. DeAndre Ayton reminds me of Joel Embiid a little bit, because now I know Philly fans don't want to hear that, but like, Embiid is really a great scorer, but Ayton does a little bit of everything, and Ayton's a really good rebounder too. So I think Ayton can get Jokic out of his game a little bit, and I think that will be important to see, and vice versa maybe. I think that's a matchup. I think the other one is Murray healthy.
No, he's not. He's done for the year.
Well, then I'm just gonna go Booker, because I think you got to shut down Devin Booker. He's incredible. The guy he doesn't miss. I feel like he just doesn't miss shots. And if he's open, he's not going to miss. If his hands in his face, he's not going to. You got to somehow figure out a way to not let him have the ball. Now, as Leonard said, and I agree, I like your X factor criteria. But when I think of an X factor, I think of a guy that if you take off the floor, kind of like an MVP, you don't want to lose him, right? My guy is Chris Paul. The reason I said that I believe the Suns will go to the NBA Finals is because I don't think Chris Paul has been more determined in his career to get there. And I think he knows his time is limited. He's an older player now. And wow, what a supporting cast he has around him. Because to me, I think the Suns go as Chris Paul goes, well as Devin Booker's scoring goes. And that might be an obvious point, but I just want to throw that out there for fans that don't follow, because we want viewers, we want listeners, so please follow and listen. Cheap plug. But Derek, that's what I think about Phoenix, and I don't want to belabor the point, but I'm rooting for him. Let's go, Suns.
Yes, you are. Man.
Suns and 7.
Okay. I really don't see how Denver wins this series. I think they got, and Leonard mentioned it, they're playing with 3 starters, pretty much.
Not many.
They got away with it against a very bad front court defensive team for Portland. Campazzo and Austin Rivers are 2 guys. Even Aaron Gordon he's probably not as good as he was in his prime, I would say. They need Michael Porter Jr. to put up at least 20 points a game, he's played very well this season. I believe he's one of the other guys who was in the voting for most improved player. But
he's so young.
I truly think I like how the Suns are set up. You got Ayton, big man, can move. It's not like he's just a big man. He's very agile. You mentioned the scores. I talk about Jay Crowder, someone who's been there, someone who can play the 3 and D, shoot the 3 a little bit. I liked him when he was a Celtic. I wasn't too happy when he was sent off. I like Jay Crowder as a player. He's going to give you minutes. I truly like the Suns. I would even go to say they may win this in 5 games is what I may go. But I don't know. It's tough to go against an MVP, but when there's not much else on the team that I love, Millsap well past his prime. JaVale McGee doesn't get much time, so I don't really love the Nuggets in this series. Leonard, did you give a number of games? You went with the Suns, right?
I think it's 6. I think Denver will win some games. I think
Okay.
Denver, is not going to go out early. 5 games. I mean, that's possible. I mean, it doesn't take 5, 6. I mean, we're all in the same ballpark. I'm glad you brought up Jay Crowder because I said some words I won't say here. Every time he touched the ball and he was like wide open. I'm like, can somebody guard him on the Lakers? I'm like, the guy's good. Yeah. And another thing, I'm glad we mentioned Jay Crowder. He was on that Heat team last year that went to the finals. And
yes,
he was off. I mean, that was a key loss. And you took, and again, the casual NBA fan doesn't really know Jay Crowder, but he also played really good defense on LeBron. He kept him in check, and some people think he shut him down. And he made a lot of 3-pointers. I don't know what his percentage is, but yeah, he's definitely a very good role player, good locker room guy. I didn't forget about it. I tried to forget about him. Still waking up in cold sweats. But anyway.
And by the way, DeAndre Ayton, 80% in the first round. So if you could play
so
anywhere like that.
I'm not good at math, so it's close.
In the East, we have the number 1 seed Philadelphia 76ers and the number 5 seed Atlanta Hawks. Already 1 game done. Atlanta went into Philadelphia and took the first game. They were actually way out ahead for those who watched, and it got real closer and closer and closer as the game went. But Philadelphia did win the season series 2-1. I'll start us off this time. I'll change it up a little bit. When we look at Philadelphia, I mentioned to Joe in the beginning of the season, I very much I mean, it's easy to say now they're the number 1 seed, and the team last year didn't do very well. But I very much liked this team a lot better than the team last year, even though there may have been more talent on last year's team. I love I love getting Seth Curry. They're going to need him to shoot his threes. Atlanta has some good defenders on the wing. Ben Simmons. I don't mean to slap the table, but Ben Simmons needs to shoot more. I don't know if not from 3-pointer, but he needs to take more shots.
Eric,
every time, Joe, he takes about. Go ahead.
I just want to. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you, but when you said that, it just came to me that I had to say this to you. Is that all of the Delaware Valley and the surrounding areas always talk about it? Just the elbow jumper. Just shoot the elbow jumper. That's what they say. But you're right. No, he needs to just suck it up and shoot the basketball.
He averaged 68 field goal percentage. He's a point guard. He's not DeAndre Ayton, the center, who only takes shots from 12 feet and less. He's a guard, so 68%. And when he drives to the basket, he's very shifty, and I don't know why he decides that he needs to let. I mean, okay, Joel Embiid was MVP candidate this year, but especially with now being injured, although you didn't really see too much. I didn't really see him have any difficulties in the first game. So,
no.
But you don't like to see him take the full the full pressure on his shoulders. Tobias Harris, great player. When you look at the Hawks, man, and I've said I really like that roster. I love Trae Young. Clint Capella, no one really thought about when he came over from Houston, but I thought that's a pretty big sign for Houston because as a shot blocker, there's not too many better. 3-point shooters, Bogdanovich, Horder, and Gallinari he only comes off the bench. I was a little shocked the entire season he was the 6th man, but Lou Williams, a good backup point guard for them to have.
Next Sixer too.
Yeah, former Sixer.
Man, I can't. I can't.
Can I save you here? You
yeah. Go ahead. I don't know what I want to pick yet. Go ahead, Leonard. You start.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. So, I think that this is what I think the biggest difference between the Sixers last year and the Sixers this year. There's actually a couple of things. Number one, they upgraded their coach. There's no doubt upgraded their coach. Number two, they upgraded their shooting. And number three, someone was able to figure out oh, you have this superstar and this superstar. They figured out a way to make it work together. I'm not a Sixers fan, but obviously living here, I hear a lot about Sixers. I could not stand hearing people talk about, oh, they just they can't coexist. Are you kidding me? I mean, Embiid is one or 1A MVP candidate this year. He may get it only because he plays in Philly and the Joker plays in Denver. 10 o'clock games. It's the East Coast centric, voters.
Yes.
But
Yeah.
but I think Embiid loses it because he didn't play enough games. But anyway, and then they realize, okay, so we have this amazing talent in Ben Simmons. He's not a good shooter. So let's stop trying to put a square peg in a round hole. Let's just get shooters. Let's get people that can shoot. And I think he should drive to the basket 100% of the time, because this is what's going to happen. Embiid's going to have a lob. Embiid's going to be open. Curry's going to be open. Tobias Harris. You want to talk about mid-range jump shots? Tobias Harris, 15, 18 feet all day.
Yeah.
You got Danny Green, which all of a sudden Toronto Raptor can shoot threes. Laker, and now he's back shooting well with the Sixers. So I feel like they have Doc Rivers like, okay, you do this well, you do this. Not, you're Ben Simmons. I know the media wants you to shoot 3-pointers, so go shoot threes. And I think that was the fatal flaw for the last coach, where they try to make Ben Simmons something he's not. I think he should drive to the basket 100% of the time. He gets the front court in foul trouble, which in this series with Capella, you give him some early fouls. It changes that roster a little bit. And if he's super aggressive, just keep going to the basket. Because here's the thing, in this NBA, you're not going to get – look, if this was 1987, you're playing in Detroit, you'd get clotheslined, right? You're not going to get clotheslined. What are they going to do, right? They're not going to hit you that hard. You're going to get fouled. Yeah, I know your free throw shooting, Ben Simmons, isn't fantastic, but, get to the basket, get some fouls, get them in the penalty early, and then beyond that, you know what that's going to do? It's going to slow the game down, and that's going to take an advantage away from Atlanta, because Atlanta thrives in the open court because they have a lot of players that are 6'6" to 6'9", and they can run up and down the court. They're interchangeable parts. Yes, drive 100% of the time, and I think if Ben Simmons makes that commitment to drive all of the time, I think the Sixers can win this series because it can change and shift some of the momentum in the half court.
Joe, what do you think?
All right. So just so people remember, I'm not a Sixers fan. I'm just a Phillies fan. I gotta throw that out there. So I'm gonna be unbiased because I don't have an NBA team. No, I think a big X factor this game isn't just a player, it's a player's health, and I think it's Joel Embiid. He looked great yesterday. I did see some of the game. I just think that he needs to watch, because win or lose tomorrow, and it's a big game tomorrow, but win or lose, if he can't play game 3, 4, or 5, that's trouble. So he needs to not dive on the ground for loose balls. He needs to just make himself be by the basket. Don't try to go full effort. And I know he's not going to do that because that's not the type of player he is.
Can I interrupt, Joe, real quick? I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I have to say this. I think how you get hurt is you play scared. I think Joel Embiid has to play the way he has to play, because if he doesn't, it's just not going to work. It's like players that come back from ACLs and Achilles and other injuries, they got to go full speed. And if Embiid is healthy, he played amazing yesterday. Yeah. He's got to be himself. And I think if he does play tentative, I think that's when someone can get hurt a lot more than just being careful.
That's a fair point. That was a good call. Yeah. All right. Well, I still think the health is important, though. He can't. Oh,
absolutely.
No doubt about it. He can't be out of the lineup. That is definitely one of my things. I also think it was interesting what you said about Simmons. Even though I say he should shoot the elbow jumper, he's starting to hit free throws. That's a good sign. But he's so talented and he's so good to the basket. I saw him play live 2 years ago. I was seriously amazed at the way he runs down the floor. He glides. He's like, when they call him like a gazelle, right? He's that way. He just glides down the floor.
Geographic all of a sudden.
I mean, I just throw it out there. But anyway, I will say this, that Curry and Green are important because your role players sometimes need to step up in big games. Both guys can do it. Tobias Harris scored 37 in one of these games. He's very integral. I I'll tell you right now, though, this is going to be really interesting. My brother's attending tomorrow night's game. If they lose tomorrow night and they go down 0-2, going back to
Atlanta.
oh boy, Phillies baseball gets even more in focus. The Sixers need to win tomorrow night, because if the Sixers win tomorrow night, we got a series on our hands.
I feel like what the Sixers did after the first quarter, or maybe like halfway through the second quarter onward, I think set a precedent, because I didn't see the game yesterday, but Atlanta came out and they could not miss. They could not miss.
Right.
And yep. That's going to bounce itself off over a 7-game series or a 6-game series.
Oh, yeah.
How long this goes. So I feel like, Atlanta was 20 for 47 from the three-point arc. During the regular season, they average about 12, 13. So they exceeded their average by a significant amount. If they just shoot average, they lose that game by double digits. So yeah. I feel like, now granted, Atlanta's good. They also came in on a high. They won a lot of games. They won 4-1 in the previous series. This is going to be a good series. This is the caveat, though. If Embiid's healthy, I think this can potentially go the distance. But you're 100% right. If they lose tomorrow night, they may not even come back to Philly.
Sixers in 6.
Where you got, Leonard?
I'm going to be different. I'm going to say Atlanta wins in 7 games.
Wow.
Trae Young hits a 25-footer as the shot clock's winding down in game 7 to cap off like a 36-point game. I don't know. I'm just throwing crap out there.
I love Trae Young, by the way. He's a
good player. No, look, I think if I literally had a gun to my head, I think I would pick the Sixers. I think they're the better team. They've been the better team the whole season. And I think Doc Rivers has been in series where he's lost the first game. And yes, when he was with the Clippers, some things happened there that wasn't, I think, true, Doc. I think Doc Rivers is going to be fine. I think they're going to get back on track. I think they win tomorrow. They just got to get back to playing defense, and Atlanta will eventually miss some shots.
Yeah, man, it was tough. It's tough, but I think I'm going with the Sixers as well. I definitely think Atlanta keeps this a series, though. It's going to go the distance. I'm saying 7. And I think the Sixers take it, but it's very close. Yes, fans, I know we are way past our time here, but we still have one to go. So let's
the longest show in timeout history, Derek.
It might be, me. Yeah.
That's the problem.
I know.
I'll shut up.
Neither do I, Leonard.
We still have one to go, so let's run through it. And that is what may be the best series of all these. One game already through. That is the number 2 seed Brooklyn Nets and the number 3 seed Milwaukee Bucks. First game was on Saturday. Brooklyn took it in Brooklyn. Bucks have won 2 out of 3 in the regular season. Joe, we'll start off with you. Your pick is the Bucks to make the NBA Finals. Are you sticking with it?
Well, I'll tell you this. Harden, Irving, and Durant are scary. And if you're any Sixer fans out there, I'm telling you right now, you want the Bucks to win. Although I
their
say
own
there's
big 3, though.
Antetokounmpo,
kind of
Middleton, right? And who would you say the third would be?
Holiday. Drew Holiday.
And Holiday, sorry. Okay. Here's my thing, guys, and our audience. I'm gonna say the Bucks need to shut down 2 of the 3. I don't think just 1. I think 2. Because Durant can go off. Right? Maybe he scores 35. Maybe he scores 40. But if you could somehow limit Irving and limit, or 45, 50. If you can limit Irving and Harden, then maybe you have a chance you're scoring your own points and you're playing your game. As Lee Corso would say on college football game day, not so fast, my friend. I love the Bucks. I had to do it. It was perfect. I love the Bucks, but guys, no way. The Nets are so good, and I just think this team is the apps. Everybody's mad at LeBron James and the whole, the answer or the whatever that was. The whole I'm going to South Beach to play with my friends. Harden, Irving, and Durant is a super team. This is exactly what a super team is made of. I think we can agree on that, right? But guess what? They're all really talented, and they all do a lot of like interesting things. They move the ball, they shoot well, they're athletic. To be a really good, great basketball team, you have to do those things. Yes, Giannis Antetokounmpo is one of the best players in the NBA, and he's going to be that for a while. I'm telling you, I should have not have done it. I'm contradicting myself. I think the Brooklyn Nets, it's their time. I think they're going to beat the Bucks, and my bold prediction is they're going to do it in 5 games. And I'm going to leave it there. My Bucks are going down.
And by the way, I'm sure Leonard is going to mention it. Game 2, James Harden is out. He left early in the first game, hamstring tightness. He is officially out for game 2. Go ahead, Leonard.
You got to stop one of the two.
Yeah, I guarantee you the Bucks are going to play great defense on Harden next game. I guarantee he scores 0 points and 0 assists.
Wow.
No. Sorry.
That's a bold prediction.
Fair enough.
That's a bold prediction. I got some other ones. No. In all seriousness, I think the Nets are a better team. And I think because their 2 best or 3 best players are better than the Bucks' 2 or 3 best players. It's pretty simple. And I think with Kyrie Irving and with Harden, if he plays later in the series, I mean, we forget how good Durant is because he missed over 600 days, like between the calendar years of playing a game, had a crazy Achilles injury. He seems like he's 100% now. And he played in Golden State with Curry and with Clay, so he didn't shoulder the huge burden of scoring. We forget how good he is. And I think when he's right, there's not a better scorer in the NBA, period. I think he could go 40 points in probably sandals. I mean, the guy can just flat out score. Kyrie Irving is, I don't know how you learn how to dribble a ball like that, but that guy's just amazing. Yeah. I really have to say that. And the guy's amazing. And when they're meant, see, here's the thing. I said this jokingly to a friend when they all got together. I'm like, man, this is like Team Durant and Kyrie. They never seem to be happy about anything, right? So I'm grumpy. I'm like, how is this going to really work? Maybe they're just like, okay, we're going to win an NBA championship. They're all playing well. I picked 2 guys to play well in the series that I think is critical for them to win. Joe Harris, we forget. Again, he stands around. All he does is make 3-pointers. And Blake Griffin. We know Blake Griffin sighting. In the last game, he had 14 points off the bench. That's the thing. If Joe Harris and Blake Griffin play well, this team, the Nets could easily win this series in 6 games. Easily. Because although Milwaukee's a good team, although Milwaukee's solid on a lot of players, sometimes talent just beats out talent. And I think that, I don't know. I like the fact I like what Nash is doing as a coach. And when Harden's playing point guard, getting 18 assists, I mean, yeah, I really feel like this will be – now, granted, if Harden misses the entire series and hamstring injuries don't really go away, they have to be managed. So he could be playing in game 3 or game 4. I know this goes back a very long time, but – Lakers were playing Detroit Pistons in the finals back in 1989. They were going for three in a row, which was the first in like 30-plus years. Game 1, Byron Scott pulls a hamstring. Game 2, Magic Johnson pulls a hamstring. Series is over in a 4-game sweep. So it doesn't take much for Harden to miss the rest of the series. If Harden misses the rest of the series, then I give the Bucks a chance. But if all things are equal, I think the Nets win this series in 6. I think Durant continues to play well. And I think Team Grumpy can maybe smile a little bit at the end.
Man, I really liked the team that the Bucks put together this season. I like that they brought, you mentioned PJ Tucker in the beginning of the podcast. I really like him and how he fits in Milwaukee, that tough presence that they desperately needed. I like Jeff Teague although doesn't really get many minutes, but the veteran point guard in there. Brian Forbes, as a shooting guard off the bench, I like him. Bobby Portis, all those guys on the bench. But like you said, Leonard, the starting 5 seems to be better than what the Bucks are going to throw out there. Unfortunately, I love Drew Holiday. Man, I love this Bucks team, but everything that the Nets brought on, including Blake Griffin, DeAndre Jordan didn't even play anymore. He's not even in the rotation. He was the starting center at the beginning of the season. I don't even know. But Bruce Brown is another key X factor off the bench. Driver to the basket, not really a shooter. Jeff Green, someone who's always had plenty of minutes in playoff games. I can't go Bucks. Giannis, there goes another year. We're going with the Brooklyn Nets. I'm gonna agree. I agree. I'm going with the Nets in 6 games.
Sleep till Brooklyn. Right?
Yeah.
You're just Milwaukee any other year, they probably would be in the finals, but the Nets just put together a better team. And again, it's all about health. I mean, anything can happen, but if Harden takes a day off or game off and comes back in game 3, the pressure goes back to Milwaukee. I think Nash is a better coach. I know he's a rookie coach for the most part, but I think he's a better coach. I think the Nets can win this series. I'll tell you what, I think with the Lakers and with the Heat losing in the first round, it opens the NBA up. You think about the teams that are left and what we could end up with. We can have some amazing first-time champions. Yeah. I mean, you think about it, the entire bracket, Phoenix has never won, Denver's never won, Utah's never won, and the LA Clippers, of course, haven't won. They never gone to the Western Conference Finals. And then let's look in the East. The Sixers haven't won a championship since Moses Malone. Right. You have the Nets, who they went to back-to-back finals and played 2 juggernauts in the Lakers and the Spurs. No one was beating those teams that year. They won an ABA title, but that doesn't count. That and $1 will get you a cup of coffee. So, you have Milwaukee. They haven't won a championship since a guy named Lou Alcindor. A little later, and it was changed his name to Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. So that goes back a bunch of years. So when you think about it, this is Atlanta. I'm gonna pull out the real stats. Bob Pettit and the Atlanta Hawks winning the only championship in between all those Celtic championships. So you think about how long we've had champions. I think the NBA playoffs just got really exciting because you could literally throw these teams that are left and put them in one of those little raffle things or whatever, and pick 2 teams. I think most fans would be like, sure, I would watch that NBA Finals. So that's really where I feel like the NBA has really grown over the last couple of years. There's so many cool teams out there.
Well, that will do it for our NBA playoffs first round recap and second round preview. Leonard, we appreciate your insight. Your NBA knowledge is probably the best that has been on this show so far in its 50 episodes. Congratulations. You're on episode 50 of Time Out.
50. Yeah. We got to 50, and it's the longest one, right? The longest running one, right?
This is by far. If you don't count the MLB play-by-plays that we do,
that's 2.5 hours.
Sit down.
That's kind of cool. No, I tell you, I have a great time with this. This is really awesome. I would love to at some point maybe do something live. I know there's obviously some pressure doing something live. I don't know if that's possible, but it'd be really cool. Anytime that you guys need me to talk about sports, I'm in. This is a lot of fun.
Oh, Leonard, you'll be back. Don't worry. We'll make sure.
Thank you.
Sure.
We appreciate it
tonight. Yeah.
Joe.
No problem. Thanks, guys.
Quick final thoughts from you.
I think I only have 3 words. Hold on, wait. Oh, this was 2 hours.
Is that 4 words?
Show. If you don't count the 2. And I work at an elementary school. Well, but anyway, no, this was fun. Leonard, thanks again for coming on. And
no problem.
It was cool to talk about these NBA teams. And I'm going to try to watch some games this week. And my weekends.
Hey, real quick, I know the games are late. But NBA TV, if you get that, they have an hour condensed game later in the day or whatever. You can watch it.
I would
look for those and just record those. I mean, I don't want to stay up to 1 a.m. to watch complete games. And although I don't have a horse in the race anymore, but Some of these games are going to be very compelling as the series go on.
I was looking at box scores and trying to look at highlights, but that's a good point, though. That's a very good point.
Yeah, they make it great. I mean, you think about back like 30 years ago or 25 years ago. I hate to date myself, but I remember 1 or 2 games being on a week, having to finagle with my dad or mom to stay up late, then looking at the box scores and making sure like it was crazy. People today just go on your phone. You can watch 9-minute games on YouTube.
Yeah,
it's fantastic. I mean, sports has never been any better, and it's everything at your fingertips. So, but yeah, anytime you guys want me to talk about sports, I'm good. I'm good to go.
Awesome.
Well, hey, you're not that old, Leonard. I even had when I remember when I was younger, I had a little bedpost, and for the games that ended up finishing too late, Dad would always put a Post-it note on the bedpost with what the final score of a big game was, and I would look at it the next morning. I'm like, can't believe I missed it. So,
oh wow, that's pretty cool. Yeah, I remember because you guys are baseball fans. I remember Game 5 of the '96 World Series. Yeah, I think it was Pettit and Glavine pitching.
Yeah.
And my dad's like, "Going to bed?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm going to bed." Yeah. So. Ninth inning, obviously Wetlands in, ball goes up. Paul O'Neill, the ball's like tailing away. And Joe Torre later on said that he moved Paul O'Neill about 5 or 8 feet over, and he catches the ball. And I'm like, yeah, like really loud. And all I hear is the door opens, the light from upstairs, go to bed. And that was it. Gave me off, ran upstairs. Was so happy. I was up for hours. But
I remember that. I remember that.
Woke my dad up at like, I don't know, 11:30.
I was in elementary school then. I watched that game. I remember that.
That's the thing. Like I know I'll be 42 in less than a month. So I'm getting there.
But, I'm only a couple years younger than you, Leonard.
Oh, cool. So I just feel like there's so much cool stuff that I'm watching over, with the COVID situation last year and not any live sports, watching NFL, watching NBA games on these, from years ago. I'm like, yeah, I watched this game live, 92, 93. It's like, I don't know, but it's fun. This is great. Like I said, if I can get paid to do this, that would be fine. So maybe we can hit up ESPN or ESPN2 or maybe Fox, and maybe they can throw us a couple bucks for this entertainment.
We'll see. Maybe someday. Well, guys, we appreciate you. We appreciate everyone listening. We appreciate everyone's support as we continue. This is officially episode 50. I did have some half episodes in there, so we're probably around 60 something, but officially episode 50. So Joe, congratulations, we made it. But anyways, we appreciate everyone watching. Don't forget, follow us on YouTube and subscribe on YouTube. We are out there on all podcast platforms, as well as Twitter, as well as our Facebook group. And don't forget to email us any questions, timeoutderekandjoe@gmail.com. As always, everyone, thank you for taking time out of your day to spend some time with us. Stay safe. Take care.